Good evening and welcome. Today I shall be telling the story of the boy who went forth to learn fear. Unfortunately, I was unable to find the stories of the first three, so let us begin. There once was a boy, who I shall now name Friedhelm. His father said to him one day, "It's about time you learned some life skills, old boy. So, what would you like to learn first?" And Friedhelm said, "Well, quite frankly, I've always wanted to learn how to shudder." And his father said, "Well, it's a tad strange, but I'm sure that can be arranged." And so he went to speak with the local sexton, whom I shall now name Otto, who had been teaching Friedhelm how to ring the church bells. So that night at midnight, as Friedhelm was ringing the church bells, Otto dressed up as a ghost and came up behind him going, "Ooh." Friedhelm turned around only to find what he thought was someone who wasn't quite all there in the head. He said, "Good God, man! What do you think you're doing?" And Otto, pretending to be a ghost, said nothing. Friedhelm had always dreamed of becoming a homicidal maniac, and so took this opportunity to push Otto down the stairs. He soon noticed, though, that Otto had only broken a leg, and so he fled the scene as fast as he could. In the town, they'd been preparing a production of The Lord of the Rings, and Friedhelm's father had been cast as Gollum. Unfortunately, Friedhelm didn't know this, so when he woke up the next morning and heard his father say, "Leave now and never come back," he assumed that his father must have learnt of the previous night's incident, and was kicking him out of the house. And so Friedhelm went forth, hoping to learn how to shudder. Also on the run from the police. In the first town he came across, a man told him that if you want to learn how to shudder, you ought to spend the night underneath the gallows, seeing as 7 men have just been hanged. And so that night, Friedhelm set up his campfire beneath the gallows, and he looked up, and he saw all the corpses swaying in the breeze, and he thought, "My God, they must be cold." And so he cut them down and placed them round the fire, but none of them moved, not even when their clothes caught fire. Friedhelm, being a bit of a fashion guru, thought that it was a terrible crime to let good clothes burn, and so he decided to hang all the men. Again. In the next town he came across, he went to the local inn and spoke to the innkeeper, who told him of a haunted castle. The king, he said, had promised all the riches in the castle and his daughter's hand in marriage to anyone who could stay in that castle for 3 days. Many men had tried, but none had succeeded. The boy went to see the king, who said that he could bring in 3 non-living objects to the castle. He said, "I shall bring a fire, a lathe, and a cutting board with a knife." The king said, "Well, technically that's 4 items, but I'll allow it." So the first night, as Friedhelm sat around his fire in the castle, he heard 2 voices from the corner of the room, one of which was saying, "My God, man, it's bloody cold in here." The second saying, "If only there were a fire in the room that we could sit around and warm up." Friedhelm called out to them, "You stupid buggers, there is a fire right here." At that moment, the 2 voices chose to reveal themselves, and they were 2 black cats, who leaped over to the fire. Seeing Friedhelm sitting there, they challenged him to a Yu-Gi-Oh battle, saying, "Get ready to duel." Unfortunately, they triggered Friedhelm's trap card, and he trapped them under the cutting board. I'm not entirely sure how that works, but you just go along with it. In retaliation for this, several black cats and black dogs from around the room suddenly charged at Friedhelm, who drew his knife and fought and killed them all individually. For some reason they had not learned how to fight as a group and overwhelm him. Assuming that the evening's entertainments were over, Friedhelm looked around the room and saw a bed, so he got in it. The bed, unhappy with its surroundings, started to walk around the castle. Unfazed, Friedhelm yelled, "Faster, my noble steed, faster!" However, the bed did not listen, and it decided it wanted to be an Australian bed, so it turned upside down. Friedhelm, however, was less fond of this idea, and so he went to sleep by the fire. On the second night, Friedhelm had decided to build his fire not in the fireplace under the chimney, but in the middle of the room. During the evening, a pair of legs fell down the chimney and into the fireplace. Friedhelm walked over to the fireplace, and he looked up at the chimney and said, "I seem to have a pair of legs here. I don't suppose you've got the rest of the body up there." At which point, the rest of the body fell down the chimney and reassembled itself with the pair of legs. It was soon followed by several other men who came down the chimney, carrying the legs of dead men and a skull. They set up the dead men's legs as if for bowling. Friedhelm saw what they were doing, and he called out, "I'm sorry, but a skull is not quite spherical. But I have a lathe. I can make you a good bowling ball if you want." And so Friedhelm and the men continued to play 10-pin bowling until midnight, at which point all the men promptly vanished. On the third night, 6 men came into Friedhelm's room carrying a coffin. He looked into the coffin and thought it might be his dead cousin. He said, "My God, I think that might be my dead cousin." He warmed up the body, thinking that that might revive him. For some reason, that actually worked. However, the body was quite confused and attempted to strangle Friedhelm. Friedhelm was a little annoyed at this, and so he shut the coffin. However, they'd made a lot of noise during this altercation, and an old man had come in wondering what the kerfuffle was. Seeing Friedhelm, the old man said, "I bet you I can beat an anvil onto the ground." Friedhelm was quite confused about what the man was saying, so he took the bet, hoping he could find out what the man was on about. The man led him into the basement, and started to pull off the stunt. Friedhelm soon lost interest, however, and remembered his dream to become a homicidal maniac. So he split the anvil, using his super strength, and got the old man's beard trapped in it. Then he pulled out an iron rod and started beating the man to death. The old man, not being very happy with being beaten to death, told Friedhelm that if he stopped beating him to death, he'd show him where all the treasure was hidden in the castle. Friedhelm, forgetting that all the treasure in the castle had already been promised to him, thought that was a very good deal, and so he stopped beating the man to death. The following morning, Friedhelm went over to the king, and he said, "Well, I stayed in your castle for 3 days, and I found all the treasure. However, I have not learned how to shudder." The king said, "Well, that is an awful shame, but marry my daughter, will you?" And so the pair got married, but his new wife soon got tired of his complaints that he had not learned how to shudder. So one day she got a bucket of ice-cold water and poured it over him, causing him to shudder. He said, "At last, I have learned to shudder. Unfortunately, I have not learned true fear." Well, it's a bit of an anticlimax, really, but I'm afraid that is actually the end of the tale, so, goodbye.